if you're gonna watch UFC 316 already, why not get paid while doing it? UFC 316 is stacked. We have Sean O'Malley taking on Merab Dvalishvili in the main event. They are having a rematch after Merab basically dominated him in their first encounter, then went on to have an epic showdown with Umar Nurmagomedov where he retained the belt and he's putting it on the line once again. Sean O'Malley looks to right the wrong from the first fight and land that killer knockout blow to reclaim his title. We got the return of Kayla Harrison in her title matchup against Julianna Pena. These girls have some beef, so you know it's going to be a bit of a banger when they step inside the octagon. And like I said, if you're already watching these fights, why not get paid while doing it? This is the official betting breakdown for the UFC 316 main card. I'm giving you sharp early reads on the matchups, who's more likely to win, and where you should be putting your money. So let's get into it. So ladies and gentlemen, we will not waste any time at all. I've taped this card early, I've done my research, and me and my VIP members already have a max bet locked in for this card, among so many other bets as well. We are locked in, fully focused, researched, and we got bets scattered throughout the main card and the prelims. So without further ado, let's get into the main event of the evening. Sean O'Malley taking on Merab Dvalishvili in their rematch. So the champion Merab Dvalishvili coming into this fight with a record of 19 wins and 4 losses, while the challenger Sean O'Malley is coming into this fight with a record of 18 wins and 2 losses. Currently, Merab is a massive favourite at -305. With the underdog price tag on Sean O'Malley coming back at +255. So what I like to do in these breakdowns is tell you my initial thoughts, the things that immediately stick out to me when I start to research this fight. And obviously in this case, it's the odds. I'm not just an MMA analyst, I'm an MMA bettor. It means I always look at the odds, because using the odds in our favor is how we get an edge and make money in sports betting. So to see Merab Dvalishvili at -300 above a -300 price tag, it stood out to me. You know, he's never been this big of a favorite in basically his entire UFC career. You know, for the most part, Merab Dvalishvili has been an underdog. In the fight between Sean O'Malley and Merab, the first fight, he was an underdog. Even in Merab's first fight after that fight, when he was the champion, he should be getting all the respect in the world. He's a +200, +250 underdog against Umar Nurmagomedov. So this guy doesn't ever really get the respect of the odds makers. And now he has. Now he has the respect of the odds makers, right? So immediately that pops out to me. So let's speak about the actual fight. And when we do that, we can determine whether the odds are correct or not, which is the only thing that you need to understand when you're betting on sports. I'm trying to educate you here. Don't worry about who's going to win. Worry about where we can find inefficiencies in the odds. So let's get into it. Sean O'Malley, a pure striker, right? This guy's not going out there shooting takedowns. This guy's not going out there getting submissions. This guy is going out there. He wants to put the paws on you. He wants to put the hands on you. He wants to put the kicks on you, the knees on you, whatever it may be. And he wants to knock you out. You know, he has good power for the weight class. Not a lot of people in the bantamweight division can shut your lights out like Sean O'Malley. And like I said, he can do it with the foot. He can do it with the knee. He can do it primarily with the fists. So he's a very well-rounded fighter on the feet, has a lot of skills on the feet. It's going to be very hard to out-kickbox this guy. I am young enough, old enough to remember when he fought Peter Yan. And Peter Yan going into that fight was known as basically a pure striker. And he turned into a wrestler in that fight. Sean O'Malley turned Peter Yan into a wrestler. The reason he was able to do that is because of his skill set on the feet. He's beautiful on the feet, elusive, great movement, Conor McGregor-esque. You know, he stands in whatever stance he wants at the time, bounces in and out of range, and lands very, very eye-catching shots, whether it be the knee, the kick. Like I told you, he's got a wide array of tools that he uses on the feet. Merab Dvalishvili is multiple levels below Sean O'Malley in the striking. But this is not a striking fight. This is an MMA matchup. And that's where the tides get even, because Merab Dvalishvili is a tide in and of himself. You know, he is like a wave that, as the fight goes on, builds up and up and up to eventually his opponent is succumbing and drowning under the pressure. Merab will go out there and shoot 15, 20, 49 takedowns like he did against Peter Yan in their 5-round matchup. I believe it was the most takedowns ever attempted in a single fight. You know, that performance there was a very similar performance, in my eyes, to when Max Holloway beat Kelvin. So when Max beat Kelvin, he threw like 700-800 strikes, right? Something like that. And at the time, that was unheard of. You know, the closest strike count to that was probably like 400 or 500. So the guy's going out there and, you know, putting a 1.6 times increase on the overall record. And that's what Merab done with the takedowns when he fought Peter Yan. No one shoots 49 takedowns. You know, no one does it. But Merab Dvalishvili does. He's a special fighter. You know, anytime someone breaks a historic record to that degree, they're special, at least in one realm of MMA. Max has it with volume and striking, and Merab has it with pace and takedown attempts. And that's where this battle is. That's where this battle will be won. Is Merab going to be able to shoot 49 takedowns, shoot 20, 30 takedowns on Sean O'Malley and keep him occupied enough to where Sean's not able to get his damaging shots off? Or will Sean make the adjustments, use his beautiful footwork to evade the ball, right? To play the matador against the pace, the furious pace of Merab Dvalishvili, and either land a big shot on the feet, like he did in the 5th round that I'm going to touch on in a minute in their first fight, or just outpoint him, hurt him, knock him down, beat him on damage. That's where the fight's going to be won, right? So like I just touched on, in the 5th round of their first fight, Sean O'Malley lands a body kick and it damages Merab Dvalishvili badly. So badly that he's holding his body, looking up to the clock multiple times, and it looks like he doesn't want to be in the octagon anymore. It was a big shot that Sean landed. And like I told you earlier, he can land with the foot, with the ball of the foot. He can land with the shin, he can land with the knee, he can land with the fist. So this guy has a wide array of tools, and the tool that landed and worked on Merab was the kick. So that tells me a multitude of things, right? The first thing it tells me is that this guy can never be counted out because he was being dominated 3 rounds down, right? It was 2 rounds down. He was 3-1 going into the 5th round. Sean had 1 round and Merab had 3. And Merab had all of the momentum. You know, he was dominating that fight for the majority of the rounds. Going into round 5, you would think Merab's just going to pull the pace on more and probably dominate the round, right? Especially because he's the one with the cardio edge on any fight he's ever fought. You know, I failed to mention it earlier, but Merab has the best cardio in UFC history, right? So the 5th round is usually going to be the best round for him, but it wasn't. It was the worst round for him. He got caught with a shot. And there's multiple ways you can think about that, right? The first thing is we can say, yeah, shout out to Sean O'Malley, because this guy should have been down and out in round 5, but he wasn't. He actually had his best round there. We can also look at it and say that Merab is always vulnerable to getting caught. You know, you could also flip it and say, was it just because Merab was 3-1 up going into round 5? He was dominating the fight. He didn't feel in any danger. He took unnecessary risk, got caught by a shot that maybe he wouldn't because his mind wasn't in it. We don't know these things on tape. You can't tell that often when a fighter loses concentration, which happens multiple times throughout almost every fight. Most people are not fully locked in, right? But if you do lose concentration, which again, as I said, happens in a lot of fights regularly, it's a thing that happens, you can get caught with shots that you wouldn't otherwise get caught with. It's just hard to tell on tape whether the guy's lost concentration or not. So, you know, if you're a Merab fan, you could flip it and say he was 3-1 up, he just let his guard down, right? But it's hard to quantify. What I can quantify is that Sean O'Malley can hurt him, whether he loses concentration or not. You know, he has the ability to hurt him, and he has the ability to come back and hurt him late after being dominated in the first 3 to 4 rounds. I think that's a positive for Sean O'Malley. One other thing that I want to speak about is the intangibles in this fight, right? So obviously in the first fight, Sean O'Malley has now come out post-fight and said that he was injured, right? He said he had almost no hip working, so only one of his hips were working. The other hip was completely destroyed. He had to have an operation. Now, do we take much from that? Now, I don't know whether Sean was really that damaged going into that fight. I'll never know because I'm not his friend. I'm not one of his teammates. I don't have inside information. I can't guarantee how bad his hip was. And I don't usually take too much from what fighters say outside of the octagon because I've learned over the years of betting in this game that the fighters will say anything to not only cope with a loss, but also to convince themselves going into certain fights. You know, they have to brainwash themselves so they believe they win, right? And that's what you need. You need a healthy dose of delusion, you know, to be a top MMA fighter. You need that. So that's another reason why I've learned to not listen to too much what a fighter says. And also because, you know, what they think and what actually plays out in the octagon is oftentimes very, very different for a multitude of reasons. So, I don't know whether we take too much away from Sean O'Malley saying these type of things, but what I will say is that I know he had an operation, so that part is true. And it can only be a positive that Sean O'Malley was even potentially injured going into that fight, right? It can only be a positive for him in this fight. It's very rare that he's going to perform worse based on the operation, based on the hip, than if he was injured going in, right? And I do believe he was injured. I mean, a lot of fighters are carrying injuries, right? If you want to come out and say he's lying completely and he's not injured at all, I mean, it's possible, but I would argue extremely unlikely. It's just how much did that impact him? Is it even going to impact him positively going into this fight, right? But it's just something to think about. It's an intangible that's probably a positive if you're a Sean O'Malley fan. So, the way I see this fight playing out is that it may largely go similar to the first fight, but the line is not where it is at the first fight, I have to look at the betting odds, as I say, and this is where I may lose some people who don't really care about actually making money on MMA. They just want to have a bet for fun. They don't think they can make any money on it. They just like the entertainment of the sport, which is a big part of the MMA community. 90% of them don't know anything about sports betting, are losing gamblers if they gamble, and they just care about the entertainment. And this is where I might lose some of you, right? But if you're serious about making money, hear what I have to say here. Merab Dvalishvili going into that fight was an underdog against Sean O'Malley, right? So the market thought he should be an underdog. And now he's a minus 300 favorite. I would argue that in that fight against Sean O'Malley, he looked about minus 300, right? I would say that that's probably a fair line. Like based on their first fight, minus 300 is about right. But what I would also say is that no two fights are the same. And that was only one iteration of the fight. So it's entirely possible that Sean O'Malley goes out there and looks way better than he did in the first fight. So then we look at the flip side. James, is it entirely possible that Merab goes out there and looks way better than the first fight? It's possible. Is it less likely than Sean O'Malley looks better than he did in the first fight? I would say yes. And pretty confidently, I would say yes as well. Now, why do I say that? Well, Sean O'Malley has a lot more margin for error than Merab Dvalishvili. Like I said, Merab looked like a big favorite already. He looked minus 300. He looked like a dominant force. So in order for him to better that performance, he has to fight even better than he did last time, which was amazing anyway, right? So it's going to be very hard to do that. He can't fight 100% better because he put on a great performance. Maximum he can do is probably 20, 30% better. And that's going to be hard to do, especially against someone who's already fought you, who could make adjustments, who did hurt you in that fight, who won 2 rounds on judges' scorecards in that fight. I think one judge had it 4-1 to Merab, but I believe the other 2 judges had it 3-2 to Merab, so giving Sean 2 rounds. And even if it was on one judge's scorecard, the point is this: multiple judges, and every single judge, saw Sean O'Malley win a round or rounds in that fight. So we all think he had a poor performance, didn't look great, and he still won a round or multiple rounds on some judges' scorecards. So I think the margin for him looking better is a lot more likely. He could come in here and maybe instead of landing that shot in the 5th round, maybe he lands it in the 2nd round and the dynamic of the fight changes, right? Even if he has a really bad performance again, he's still not going to look much worse than his current line, plus 255. And if you're still with me and you're not a professional gambler or you don't earn money from sports betting, here's the real truth behind it. The way we make money is by betting where the odds are incorrect, regardless of whether we're picking the fighter to win or not, right? So I believe that the odds are a little bit incorrect in this one. Am I picking Merab to win the fight? I'm going to have to pick him to win the fight. The reason is because, his style is built for 5 rounds and Sean O'Malley seems like he has to land damage in order to win this fight because it's going to be a tough time just outpointing Merab on the outside. So, Merab's game of takedowns and wrestling are way more consistently reliable than Sean O'Malley's big shots. But I do think that plus 255 is a juicy number. I may take a poke at that myself, and I may bet Sean O'Malley in this one. So I'm calling Sean O'Malley as the clear side. Sean O'Malley is the clear betting side, and plus 255 is good to me. If Sean O'Malley wins this fight, here's how he does it. He's bouncing around on the outside, landing good shots. Maybe he lands a killer blow. Maybe it comes with the fist, the knee, the leg, the shin. It doesn't matter. Like I said, Sean can catch you with any blow. And I think he's got great cardio, actually elite cardio as well. And I believe he showed that in his last fight against Merab and his 5-round fight against Cheeto. And I think his skill set here could carry him to a win. Merab is this unbeatable guy now, right? We have it all the time in MMA where someone comes along and they're just unbeatable and they get lined as favorites in every fight, and eventually they lose. No one is unbeatable. Everyone will be defeated at one point in time, unless your name's Khabib or John Jones. You know, you will be defeated 99.999999999. I didn't glitch out. 999% of the roster is going to take losses in their career, you know, especially when they're on top, because now they're fighting the best people in the division. So yeah, I don't think he's an unbeatable fighter, and I will be saying that Sean O'Malley at plus 255 is good odds. Next fight of the night is another title fight. We got Kayla Harrison taking on Julianna Pena. So Pena is the champion, bantamweight champion of the UFC, coming into this fight with a record of 11 wins and 5 losses. Kayla Harrison is coming into this fight with a shiny record, 18 wins and just 1 loss. And the odds are kind of reflecting that. Kayla Harrison, the challenger, which we rarely see, is a massive favorite at minus 600 odds, with the underdog price tag on Julianna Pena coming back at plus 425. First thing that stands out to me is, damn, are we here again? Julianna Pena fighting for the title, and she's plus $1 million. You know, when she fought Amanda Nunes and had that crazy upset, she also was a massive underdog. In fact, I believe a bigger underdog than she currently is now. You know, she was like plus 500, 600, 700 range at points. She's only plus 425 here, so still a gigantic underdog in a 2-horse race, but she's been here before and she's done it before. Will she do it again? You know, I'm not going to make a stand on this one. I made a stand in the main event, but I'm not going to make a stand on this one. I think that Kayla Harrison has the tools to dominate this fight. I mean, she's such a physical girl. She can throw most girls around in the clinch. She can throw most girls on their ass, and she's so dominant on top. You know, very fast top control player, meaning that she transitions into different positions quite fast. She's not just going to lay in side control for 3-4 minutes and try and burn the clock. She's going to start moving. She's going to try and mount you. Even if she is in side control, you know, she'll be going for those straight arm bars, those Kimuras. She's an extremely well-rounded girl on the mat. You know, multiple different submissions. Like I said, Kimuras. She looks for the straight arm bar. She rear naked chokes a lot of girls out. She's got a very good arm bar, you know, arm triangle choke, you know, that solid wrestler top control move. So it's like this girl can sub you from any realm of the ground position. You know, she can roll to her back with an arm bar, but she could also arm triangle you from top. So it's going to be tough for Julianna Pena to fight that, especially when she has already been submitted in her career, and submitted by girls that, you know, couldn't hold a candle to the submission skills of someone like Kayla Harrison. For example, Jermaine Durandamy, you know, who is a kickboxer through and through, and she was able to submit Julianna Pena in the 3rd round there, which, you know, I think tells you enough about, you know, like, I don't think it's going to be too tough for Kayla Harrison to submit Julianna Pena. I think Julianna Pena is very tough, you know, so she could tough out certain spots. By the end of the day, you can't tough out a choke. That's why she got submitted in that fight. And it could just be a big level difference on the mat that leads to the submission rather than, you know, Julianna panic tapping. I'm expecting this fight to go to the ground pretty early. I think Kayla Harrison will toss her, heavy top pressure, and start to dominate the fight from there. You know, she cuts a lot of weight, Kayla Harrison. Coming into the UFC, she's had to drop a division, cut a lot of weight, because the UFC doesn't have a featherweight division, whereas where she fought before, PFL, did have a featherweight division. So the UFC doesn't have that. I don't even know what they're doing with that. I don't even think they initially announced it's closed. But yeah, there's not really a featherweight division at this point in time, I don't think. So, you know, she's had to come in, Kayla Harrison, and cut a lot of weight. She's a very big girl. And so maybe in a 5-round fight, she's going to start to slow down because of the weight cut. You know, we see time and time again where fighters, they cut a lot of weight and their physicality to some degree drops off, or the intangibles drop off, you know, whether that be the cardio, whether that be the ability to take a punch. You know, these type of things are affected by the weight cut rather than your actual skills. You know, it's like you get tired earlier, you get hurt a little bit more. And I guess that's the way for Pena to win here. She needs to outdog Kayla Harrison, outlast her, you know, win a decision or maybe break her late if she gasses out. But I think she's basically hoping for Kayla to slow. And I think Pena could slow. You know, if Kayla's dominating her way to top position, like I expect her to at times in this fight, I think that Pena could gas out from that. So yeah, that's how I see the fight, guys. I want to do a little bit more study on this one. Like I said, this is my early picks. Guys, if you want my official picks and full card breakdowns, not my bets, but my official picks and breakdowns, make sure you're tuning into Parlay Madness, which is a show that will be happening later on in the week. It's 8:30 p.m. Thursday time every week on my channel right here. And I'll go through the entire card with you, not just the main card. And I'll also break down the fights in depth when I've done more research. This is an early video, so I still reserve the right to change my picks I'm giving out to also give more information on them. There's certain fights that I've researched completely and certain fights I want to look into a bit more. I do want to look into this one a bit more, but the reason I haven't looked into it too much is because I'm pretty cut and dry with my belief pre-tape, right? And that is Kayla Harrison's going to go out there and dominate it from top position, win a dominant decision, or eventually get a submission. So I have done a bit of tape on this fight. I saw Kayla Harrison's fight with Ketlen Vieira when I was studying Ketlen Vieira for her recent fight against Macy Chiasson. So yeah, I know a little bit, but I do want to look into this a little bit more. But right now, Kayla Harrison via submission or dominant decision, pretty easy pick for me, -600. Next fight of the night is Kelvin Gastelum taking on Joe Pyfer. Now, Kelvin Gastelum coming into this fight with a record of 19 wins and 9 losses, and Joe Pyfer a record of 13 wins and 3 losses. Currently, they have the odds with Joe Pyfer as one of the biggest favorites on the card in a very, very chalk-heavy card. Joe Pyfer is a -400 favorite. The underdog price tag on Kelvin Gastelum coming back at +300. So I'm going to be outright honest with you guys here. So when the fight was initially booked, which was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I done the research for the fight. I bet on Kelvin Gastelum, and then the fight was cancelled. One of the reasons I bet on Kelvin Gastelum is many, many different reasons, right? But one of the reasons was some of the intangibles I was hearing from the Joe Pyfer camp. Joe Pyfer actually had to pull out of an interview that he had a couple of weeks before the fight because he had an illness, right? And so I thought, okay, a few weeks before the fight, you can't even do an interview because you're ill, because you're sick. And now you're going to fight Kelvin Gastelum in the biggest step up of your career, probably the toughest fight you've ever fought, and you're a massive underdog, okay, or a massive favorite, I'm going to fade you, right? Like I said, many other reasons as well. And then he ended up pulling out of that fight, right? And the reason he pulled out of that fight was because of an illness, because he was sick, right? So I'm sure it was a lingering effect of what I had heard on the podcast. So I feel like we had a massive edge there with an intangible that the market didn't spot, but I did. I bet it, send it to my guys, and I really believe that if the fight took place, we would have cashed there. Joe Pyfer was so ill, he couldn't fight, right? So unfortunately, it didn't take place. But these are the edges that you have to get over the bookies. These are how you make money. So now, I don't love Kelvin as much as I did in that fight in the rebooking, because Joe Pyfer, I'm sure he's not sick anymore. He's going to come into this 100%. He's obviously, you know, very fired up for this fight and also motivated to win it enough to where he pulled out of the last fight because he really didn't want to go in there with a sickness. And a lot of fighters will fight through sickness and stuff just because they don't want to fight cancellation. They've been training this whole time for it. They need the money, etc., right? But it tells me that Joe Pyfer, he's like, no, I'm not taking this when I'm compromised. I'm coming in here 100%. So, you know, I feel like we might see a better Joe Pyfer. We will see a better Joe Pyfer than we would have seen that time. And I knew that. So I'm not in love with the Kelvin bet here, but I've already bet on Kelvin Gastelum for this fight, right? So I'm probably going to do the same again. It's the same price, +300. I think I might have even had bigger last time, but yeah, I think +300 is a massive number because, you know, Joe Pyfer hasn't proven me that he should be -400 against this level of competition in the UFC. I mean, I'm not going to break this one down for too long, because if you want to hear my breakdown for this, it hasn't changed from the last breakdown I did, which I believe on this YouTube channel you can go and see right now. Just check whatever card that Gastelum was supposed to fight Pyfer in. It was March card, and listen to my breakdown there, you know, because I go through the stylistics. I'll repeat them a little bit and I'll be fast. Joe Pyfer has great early power, and he has an ability to find his shots on the feet extremely well. Kelvin Gastelum is one of the most durable people in middleweight division history. He's taken bombs off Izzy, survived the fight, taken bombs off Jared Cannonier, survived the fight, taken bombs off a lot of fucking guys, man. And he survived basically everybody. Now, yes, he's been finished, but it's been on the mat, right? So I feel like he's probably going to be able to not get knocked out on the feet, because Joe Pyfer's gone to a decision with some guys before. It's not like he's knocking everyone out, right? And when he did take a step up, you know, against Jack Hermansson, he did go to a decision and he couldn't knock Jack out. And that was a while back, so I think he learned from that for sure. It was a very close fight, but I can't just bank on him knocking out Kelvin, right? And then we say, okay, well, his grappling skills are pretty high level as well. You know, he trains over there with Sean Brady and Pat Sabatini, and those guys are some of the best wrestling jiu-jitsu players in the entire UFC right now. I don't think Joe Pyfer is on that level, I will say. I don't think his control is that good. I don't think he likes to be a wrestler that much like they do. But I do think there's a path for Joe Pyfer to take Kelvin Gastelum down here and potentially submit him, arm triangle, something like that. You know, it's happened to him multiple times. Kelvin has been submitted in the UFC. So, you know, I do think it's possible. But when you're talking about -400 price tag, I think what is also possible is that Kelvin stuffs a couple of takedowns from a guy who doesn't wrestle that much. Maybe he stings Joe Pyfer on the feet a couple of times. You know, Joe Pyfer gets cut open. Maybe his nose is bleeding. He's feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know whether Joe Pyfer is just going to go out there and dominate Kelvin Gastelum. And Kelvin Gastelum is still a good fighter, man. He's still beating real fighters in the UFC. Daniel Rodriguez he's a real fighter. Sean Brady, he got dominated and finished by, but Sean Brady's looking like the potential next champion. He just beat the former champion in Leon Edwards. And you know what happened when Sean Brady took Kelvin Gastelum down? Kelvin got back up to his feet multiple times. And it took him to round 3 very late in the fight to finish him with a Kimura, to which he's very good at. He just finished Leon Edwards with a Kimura, who's never been submitted before. So, you know, it never actually been finished before, right? So I think that tells you a lot about Kelvin, that he's not just a complete fish on the mat. And I do think he can defend some takedowns, get back up to his feet a couple of times, and win some striking exchanges here. That is enough for me to pull the trigger at plus 300. I mean, plus 300 is massive odds in MMA. You know, this is not horse racing where the favorite is plus 300. This is a 2-horse race. You know, this is a 2-man fight. Only 2 results can happen, right? Unless it's a draw, then you get your money back anyway. So only 2 results can happen. It's either Joe wins or Kelvin wins. So 3-1 plus 300 is a big price tag, and it's intriguing to me. Joe Pyfer taking a big step up in competition here. He's never fought anyone this level outside of Jack Hermansson, a fight in which he lost. So yeah, I feel like there's value on Kelvin here. Am I outright picking him to win? Again, it's like the main event, man. Like, it's very tough for me to say, yes, I'm definitely picking Kelvin to win the fight. I'm picking Kelvin to compete here. I'm saying that the odds are incorrect. It's very hard to just outright say who's going to win the fight. What you can say is, where are the odds incorrect? That's how you get your edge. That's where you make your money. This is an MMA betting show, right? So, gun to my head, I would say Joe Pyfer wins the fight, just because I feel like he's got more ways to win. Like, he's more well-rounded, and his skill set will translate into this fight being well-rounded, better than Kelvin Gastelum. I don't see Kelvin Gastelum winning multiple minutes by taking him down. And I do think he can take Joe Pyfer down. I just don't think he can take him down and hold him down. I don't think he can submit him. So, like, I think there's more ways for Joe to win. But, man, Kelvin Gastelum at plus 300 is going to be my betting pick here. Next fight on the card, we've got Vicente Luque taking on Kevin Hollan. So these guys are veterans of the sport. Kevin Hollan coming into this fight with a record of 27 wins with 13 losses. So let me just do quick maths. Yeah, that is 40 fights on his record. That's a lot of fights, Kev. Then you got Vicente Luque coming into this fight with a record of 23 wins, 10 losses, and 1 draw. So he's actually coming in with more fights than Kevin. He's got 44 to Kevin's 40. So yeah, that's the first thing that stands out to me, guys. These guys are weathered. You know, they're long in the tooth. They've had a lot of fights in MMA. They've had a lot of fights in the UFC. Kevin Hollan may go down as the most active fighter in UFC history. I'd actually challenge you to let me know who is a more active fighter than Kevin Hollan in UFC history. Now, maybe the early UFC days, these guys were fighting multiple times a night and stuff. I guess in the modern UFC era, can you tell me in the comments anyone who's not actually above Kevin Hollan, but maybe is even close to him? Because I honestly can't think of someone who's that active in the UFC. I mean, he's kept his position in the UFC for a long time. He's fought so many fights in the UFC. Let's actually do some research here now, because this guy's fought so many times, and someone who can actually rival him is Vicente Luque. That guy is extremely active as well. But I actually want to check this because I'm very curious. So he came into the UFC via Dana White's Contender Series, which I don't even remember with Kevin Hollan. I feel like he didn't come off the Contender Series. This guy just seems like a veteran, but he did come off the Contender Series in 2018, and this is going to be his 27th fight. 27 fights since 2018 is crazy. This guy is as active as it comes, and you know, sometimes it harms him and hurts him because he's just fighting fighters who he shouldn't fight. He's stepping in short notice. He's moving up a weight class. This guy fights over 2 weight classes, and he loses a lot of those fights. But man, he's such a good fighter that he also wins a lot. I still see Kevin Hollan as someone who, although he's had so many fights in the UFC, someone who's, I don't know if he's necessarily getting better, because he might just be at his peak right now. But I really feel like he's probably at his peak. You know, skill set wise, he's at his peak, I reckon. He went to a split decision with the current champion, Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, in an all striking battle, you know, Kevin Hollan is elite on the feet. Say what you want about him. He knocked out Joaquin Buckley, who again is up there in the midst of a title shot at welterweight. The current title holder at welterweight went to a split with Kevin. So when he's at welterweight, this guy is doing well. Now, of course, when he steps up to middleweight, his record isn't that shiny, right? He's taking on a lot of big grapplers, you know, like Roman Dolidze, Marvin Vettori, Derek Brunson, Rene Derrida. I mean, these beasts, yeah, they take him down, they finish him on the mat, or they just dominate. But Outside of that, I mean, the guy's cleaning a lot of people up in the division and going to very close fights with people in the division. He lost a clean decision against Michael Page, but in round 2, he had him in a rear naked choke. It was, it wasn't close because he just turned out of it, but he was dominating him for a second in round 2. Like, he got pieced up on the feet, and, you're just not going to be able to dissect Michael Venom Page on the feet unless you're super elite or you just catch a big shot, I've crazy physicality. So that was a bit of a mismatch in terms of the striking, but he still made it close at points. He still won a round. He still had moments in the fight, in the rounds, I should say. And he's taken on Vicente Luque here. Now, one thing I'd say about Vicente Luque, which pales in comparison to Kevin Holland, is that I don't think he's in his prime anymore. Vicente Luque is on a clear decline for me. And that's where the fight comes down to. If these guys were both in their primes at welterweight, it would be a banger. I probably would still go with Kevin Holland because I think he displays damage better. I think he's got a bit of a better chin. Vicente Luque was always known for his chin, but how can I explain this? Kevin Holland takes shots and rolls with shots better, right? So chin for chin, I'd still maybe go with Kevin Holland, but yeah, maybe you can argue it, because Vicente had a good chin, but you always knew when Vicente was getting touched up. He was known for a good chin because his whole face would just turn when he got hit, like he got bloodied up in fights. Even in the rematch against Nico Price, that was a war. He just took so many shots. Whereas when Kelvin Holland's fighting, even against someone like Jack Della, who will put hands on you, he's rolling with a lot of shots. He doesn't look like he's hurt that often. He takes shots well. Obviously, the guy's had 27 fights. There's been fights where he's been very hurting, like Stephen Thompson and stuff like that. But for the most part, I'd say that Kevin Holland, rolls with shots and takes damage a little bit better than Vicente Luque, and definitely a lot better these days. And that's where the fight's going to come down to, I believe. I don't think Vicente Luque will be able to handle the damage that Kevin Holland's going to put on him. That's really where it comes down to. Vicente Luque is effed on the feet, in my opinion here. I think he's a worse striker than Kevin, and I think he has less durability, and I think he's less in his prime, and he has like reach disadvantage and stuff like that, right? So I just think there's way too much things stylistically, intangibly, especially intangibly, that favor Kevin Holland here. Like I said, this is not a prime versus prime matchup. I feel like this is a somewhat prime versus decline fighter in Vicente Luque. I think Vicente Luque is going to probably try and go out here to grapple, because he has shown some of that in his arsenal in recent fights against Rafael dos Anjos, and obviously he choked out Femba Gurimbo very quickly there. But yeah, the main fight is where he wrestled Rafael dos Anjos, which he hasn't really done in his career, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that to Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland has made a career of fighting wrestlers. He knows how to defend takedowns. We saw his fight against Gunnar Nelson. It's just when he's taken a step up against these big behemoths of men at 185 pounds, he's not able to defend the takedowns. Vicente Luque, this guy's not a wrestler. I don't trust him in the wrestling. I don't think he's going to be able to beat Kevin Holland in the wrestling here. So I think he's going to be stuck on the feet, and I think Kevin Holland is going to dish out too much punishment and take punishment too well on the feet, and it's going to get a win. I think he's going to get an inside the distance win here. Kevin Holland KO is my betting pick. Kevin Holland is my betting pick. And Kevin Holland is also my outright pure pick. So this is how betting works, guys. We're calling 2 favorites pretty confidently, and we're calling 2 underdogs somewhat unconfidently, but confident that we're getting value on the betting line, which is how we beat the bookmakers, because we're trying to be sports books. We're not trying to be the average gambler. The average gambler just bets, right? The sports book don't bet. What do? They don't bet themselves. What do? They set lines. So we should start setting lines just like them, right? Because we want to be them. Because them motherfuckers are rich. Who's rich? The average gambler or the average bookmaker? The bookmaker. So you want to be the bookmaker. You want to imitate them, mimic them. What do? They don't bet. Kevin Holland's going to win. Let's put money on them. No, they set lines, right? They set odds. And they hope that you're wrong at identifying the odds. And 99% of the time, you are. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to identify these inefficiencies. That's my rant for the day. I'm trying to make money from this one, guys. This is my full-time job, so I better be trying to make money from it. So let's get on to the next fight now. So in this one, we've got Mario Bautista taking on Patchy Mix. This is one of my favorite fights on the entire card, man. It may be my #1 most anticipated fight on the entire card. So currently they have Mario Bautista coming into this fight with a record of 15-2, with Patchy Mix having an extremely shiny record, just like his fellow PFL/Bellator former organization mate Kayla Harrison. They got a lot of fucking wins and 1 loss. So currently the odds have Patchy Mix as a favorite making his UFC debut here, and he is -160 with the underdog price tag on Mario Bautista coming back at +140. So there's many things I can say about this. I'm actually going to go a lot more in depth into this in my website, Elite Zone, and also my video later in the week. I need to be quick on this one, but let's put it this way. I think that Patchy Mix has had some fights outside of the UFC that could have gone against him. You know, most lamely the fight against Magomedov. So although he only has one loss, I class him as having 2 losses. I believe that Magomedov won that fight. It is what it is. He got the judge's decision. I think there was an argument that Magomed won every round, but it was close at times for sure. I did score the fight for Magomedov. I bet on Magomedov there, so maybe I'm being biased. It was plus 250, a massive underdog price tag. I felt like we should have cashed that. But it is what it is, you know. So I feel like there's ways to shut down Patchy Mix. You know, even you look at the Juan Archuleta fight, he got shut down in that fight because he couldn't get the takedowns, right? So basically, this fight's simple, guys. Mario Bautista needs to defend the takedowns. If he doesn't defend the takedowns, he's probably going to get submitted because Patchy Mix has some of the best submissions I've ever seen in the UFC. Sorry, in MMA. Now he's in the UFC. You know, he has an amazing guillotine. That is his major move. You know, we've even seen his wife pull it off epically in the UFC in Tatiana Suarez. So the guillotine is always going to be there for Patchy Mix. I think he has a good rear naked choke as well, extremely tight. I've seen him do it multiple times. He takes the back so well. I also believe he has a great dash choke. You know, we've seen him do that as well. So he can finish you from any position on the mat. One thing I will say is his wrestling is not that great. It's not up to par. I think it's getting a lot better as his fight career went on. You know, back in the Archuleta days, his wrestling was not that good. He was just so good at jiu-jitsu, and he was great at finding the back from anywhere. But, you know, his wrestling game is coming along. But Mario Bautista is a tough test, man. He's a tough guy to make your debut against. He just beat Jose Aldo, and it's still extremely hard to beat Jose Aldo. You know, we saw Ayman Zahabi go through absolute hell to beat him. So, yeah, he's on a decline, but it's still a great win. He beat Ricky Simone, you know, who, in my opinion, is a better wrestler than Patchy Mix, and he defended most of the takedowns there. Patchy Mix is going to be in for a big test here. Mario Bautista is going to put him to work. I think Mario's clearly the better striker. I think he has higher pace, more volume, etc., etc. He's going to be throwing good leg kicks, good body shots, good head shots. Patchy won't have a time to rest in this fight. So look, this is a banger fight, guys. I'm well aware Patchy could get the submission, but I'm actually going to take another underdog and say that Mario Bautista gets it done and spoils the party. Patchy Mix is going to be thrown in every parlay this weekend. He's definitely going to be a hyped up prospect, and I think he's a very elite MMA fighter. But guess what? I think Mario Bautista is an elite MMA fighter too. And we've seen time and time again fighters come in and have UFC debut troubles, have jitters on their debut. They don't perform well because it's their debut. There's a lot going into a UFC debut, you know, and I think that automatically brings down Patchy's chance of winning by 10 to 15%. No matter how good he is at dealing with pressure, you still have to cap it in because we just don't know, right? And he is taking a step up in competition. I'd argue that Bautista and Magomedov are on a similar level. You know, maybe Bautista could even be better at this point in their career. And Magomedov had an argument to win 5 rounds to 0, right? So yes, Patchy's got a lot of hype, but I've seen through the cracks a little bit. Very good fighter, no disrespect to him, but I think Mario Bautista is going to give him a hard time this week. So Mario Bautista at plus 140. It's another betting pick for you. It's another value where I believe the value lies pick. Of course, I'm going to be wrong. I make predictions on every single fight, every single card, so I'm going to be wrong a lot, but that's where I believe the value is this weekend. I think Mario Bautista gets it done and wins the fight against Patchy Mix. Stuff to take down, keep up the pace, and edges it out. So like I said, these are just early leans for the most part. I will do more research on these fights. Some of them I'm done with, but some of them I will. So if you want all of my official bets, you can go to sublaunch.com/lucrativemma. Join me in my community group chat. You get access to everybody in there, including myself, where we speak fights, we speak where the value is. Every day we're basically, messages are being sent there from we speak about other sports and bet on other sports as well. And then you also get all of my picks, my full card breakdowns and stuff like that. And make sure you're tuning into Parlay Madness, which is my parlay show at the end of the week. But now we've come to the best part of the show, the Lucrative Wheel of Fortune, where I give you a chance to win 1 month free of my MMA Elite Zone, which is my premium package where you make a lot of money. So let's spin the Lucrative Wheel of Fortune now. If you want to be entered into next week's draw to be in with a chance to win, just leave a good comment down below and you'll be automatically entered into winning on the show next week. All right, let's spin the wheel. We're spinning now. All right, we're spinning now. Let's go. There's a lot of names, as I always say, so I don't know who's going to land on. Who's going to be the lucky one? Who's going to be the lucky one? It's slowing down. It's here. Kong's Clips. Congratulations. I think I've seen you in the comments before, so shout out to you. You have just won 1 month to the Lucrative MMA Elite Zone. DM me on social media. I'll verify your YouTube profile, which I have in front of me now, and I'll get you into our community for all of the picks, all of the bets, all of the card breakdowns, all of the long shot parlays and props, and the community chat. Congratulations, bro. Like I said, if you haven't won this week, all you need to do is comment below to be in with a chance to win next week. And if you don't want to wait till next week, if you want all of my picks for this week and all of the bets, all you need to do is go to sublaunch.com/lucrativemma and you'll get a bunch of content, full card breakdowns, all of that good stuff. So come and join us, earn some money. We are up massively, thousands and thousands of % increase in your bankroll if you would have joined when I first started. We're already up over 65 units in 2025 already, absolutely decimating the year, double-digit ROI. We are making 2025 our bitch. We're coming off a hot run on road to UFC. So sign up below and I'll see you on the inside. That's it for now. Good luck on your bets. Bang.